My name is Jerry Gill, and today is September 3, 2009. I'm visiting with Louis Blair in the Oklahoma State University campus in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is part of the Oklahoma State Oral History Program in the O State Storage Project. And Louis, I appreciate you. I know you're on campus today and taking time to come by and visit with us.
Happy to be with you, Jerry. Happy to be back on campus.
Well, your relation with Oklahoma State University goes back several years through your position as executive director with the Truman Scholarship Fund.
Correct. Actually, I think it probably goes back to about 1991.
Mm-hmm.
We had a Truman Foundation selects its scholars by using regional panels made up of prominent public servants. Our panel in Dallas had Henry Bellman on it, former senator, former governor, and a good friend of the chairman of the foundation at the time. We got Henry on board, and Henry thought, why are we giving all this money to people from schools other than OSU?
And he would think that way too.
Yes, and so then he chose Bob Gorman and said, Bob, you need to get Louis Blair up on campus and to have a job.
What? Maybe step back just a minute. How did you become involved with the Truman program?
Serendipity. I had a good friend who used to play squash with him, indoor right at Sim. I was working in the White House and bumped into him one day. And I was, so what are you doing? And he said, I'm running the Truman Scholarship Foundation. Come help me select scholars and give away money. Delighted. Did that for 10 years. One day I got a letter from him and said, Louis, I'm retiring. Would you like to have my office across the street from the White House? An old historic building. Would you like to travel around? Would you like to give out money? And I said, absolutely. And then, by the way, does the job pay anything? Pays very well. And that was it.
That was the clincher, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, can you share some information about the Truman Scholarship Program, its history, its purpose, its goals?
As you know, federal government, I guess starting with Roosevelt, maybe even with Hoover, tries to honor its former presidents with some memorial. Bricks and mortar, a library, something like that. Truman Library was built by private funds. So there was a bricks and mortar, and Truman let it be known he'd like to have some scholarship program to honor him. So after his death on the 26th of December, 1972, some people got together and said, need to have a scholarship program. And one of his best friends had been Stuart Simonton, who was then senator from Missouri. Simonton's son was a congressman from Missouri. And the family and the Simontons and some others conceived of this idea, put it together. It was sent to President Ford for his signature. Ford had a bust of Truman in his Oval Office. Ford signed it with a flourish, and that's what set it up.
Did President Truman, did he indicate that he would prefer something like that as opposed to a bricks and mortar kind of project, as you indicated earlier? So which it says a lot about his values, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Mm-hmm.
Truman never went to college, but he went for one semester. And I think he always wished he could have had more education. And he valued it highly. And that's put him on as his memorial.
So what was the sort of the mission, if you will, of the fund? What the goals, the purpose of it? Could you share a little bit of that with us?
The goals, and it's in the legislation, the goals were to help young people prepare for careers in public service. And actually, I think it was to establish a trust fund to help young people prepare for careers in public service. Did not define public service, left it open so it would be more than just federal employment or federal, state, local employment.
This was part of the early funding for it. Was government supported through funding or private
So-
fundraising or combination?
It was a trust fund. It was a one-time appropriation
Okay.
from the government in the amount of $30 million. And then they created in Treasury a fund or a mechanism to administer that. The act set up the foundation and called for a director that became me to select though of the money oversee.
Why are international and national scholarship programs like the Truman program, Udall, Marshall, Goldwater, Gates, Rhodes, etc., why are they so important and so coveted to the recipients in respective universities?
Well, I think there's several reasons. One, if something is rare, that becomes coveted. Second, if it's a mark of distinction, extraordinary distinction for the student, and that reflects on the university. And third, I think, is the values that scholarship represents. Truman Foundation, it's public service, leadership, service to others.
Is it? I know that to the universities, it's very prestigious to the individual to get it, but also to universities. I guess it sort of marks them as distinguishes them as special when they have those as an eye.
And that's one of the things that Oklahoma State has done ever so well, and President Halligan really jumped on and said, hey, let's have a number of Truman Scholars, a number, let's recognize them. And one of the things that Halligan did that I liked so much was in the recruiting material to get freshmen here. He highlighted what the institution had done for Truman Scholars, other scholarships, and says, hey, yep, athletics is important, football, basketball, wrestling, but also not just academics, but service to others. President Halligan was Senator Bellman was the initial spark. Halligan was the visionary, and Dorman was the action guy that made it all happen. Fabulous team.
Louis, you've had the opportunity to study many scholar development programs across the country. From your unique perspective, what have you observed about the successful programs? What have been the components and factors that stand out?
And I have know something about him in my 17 years at the Truman Foundation. I visited some 240 college campuses. From University of the Virgin Islands in the south to the University of Maine in the north to the University of Alaska in Fairbanks in the way northwest to the University of Hawaii to the University of Guam, and a lot of them in between. What's it take for success? One, certain values of the institution that attract students. Two is an appreciation by the senior administration of this and the willingness to commit some manpower to make it happen. And then a staff person like Bob Droman who says yes. Now, Truman Foundation, we give out 75 scholarships a year. Sounds like a big number when you realize that 3,000 junior colleges and four-year colleges You know, it's not likely you're going to get one of these unless you have terrific students every college has, and somebody works hard at it.
There's about 70 to 75 a year giving out. Listen, in your opinion, what should be the mission and the goals of a successful scholar development and recognition program? I mean, is it just about receiving prestigious scholarships?
It's finding a group of great kids and not molding them, but bringing out what is in that person. So you don't say, hey, you're a hotshot student, we're going to turn you into a public servant or a Truman Scholar. It's saying, you've shown you've got these values, these commitments. Let's talk about the Truman. Now let's go through the arduous process of the application. And applying is about like taking a demanding 3-hour class.
Lucy, what would you say to a young man or young woman who participated for a couple of years in these programs, maybe competed but never won one of the scholarship recognition? What would you say to that young person?
Well, sometimes we make mistakes.
Good answer.
But we try to be upfront to anybody applying and saying, look, odds are 10 and 1. If through the process you learn to write better, you become more focused on what to do after OSU. You make friendships with folks like Bob Drummond. You can't lose. And we did a follow-up survey of 1 year after people got the skinny letter that says, you lost, to see how they felt. And roughly 92% said they were pleased they applied, even though they hadn't been selected. When it came down to graduate school, they'd done most of the application. They'd focused, they knew what they wanted to do, they'd made some friends.
Well, how did you first learn about OSU Scholar Development Program?
Was
it through Dr. Henry Bellman?
And Bob Drummond.
Okay. Well, from your, can you talk about the relationships that you've had, Louis, with OSU through the years? Milestones in the program, people relationships, and scholars that you remember.
Friendship with Bob Drummond and Bob's become family. Jim and Halligan, they've been house guests for me. Chris Stevens, been a house guest. And we don't have a lot of house guests. There've been others that with just a bonded affection, friendship. We've become friends. There's another university in this state. The colors are sort of cream and crimson. And I don't think I have a friend there.
That speaks well for you. But from your perspective, how has OSU's, you observed it since the early 90s, from your perspective, how has it evolved and developed through the years, do you think?
And it's evolved and developed stunningly well. What has happened, and OSU has had some success recently, but not as much. Not that OSU isn't terrific, but a lot of other places have gotten into scholar development big time. And so the recruiting, the preparation, the mentoring has caught on in a number of other places.
Was OSU one of the sort of early adapters, if you will, in your program?
Yeah, probably.
Outside the private universities.
Yeah, the first one that really professionalized it excuse me, was Kansas State University.
Mm-hmm.
And that church, you don't have to be Ivy League to win. And Kansas State did very well in the 80s. Has had a bit of a fall off. Still does well, but not spectacular. Others have caught up. Same thing with OSU.
Louis, what do you feel are the strengths of OSU Scholar Program?
Commitment by Truman.
Mm-hmm.
The willingness of the institution to have a guy like Bob Truman. And third, I think there's a modesty inherent here on the campus. And I think there's a service ethic that comes from being a land-grant institution.
Are there components of the program that you feel like could be enhanced, maybe added that we don't have?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would love to see another staff person there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see an endowment that makes it a permanent entity. Those are probably the two that just jump out at me.
You, since you retired from your position as executive director of the Truman Fund, you continue to visit the university, which we're delighted that you do. What brings you? What keeps you coming back to Oklahoma State, and what's the nature of that
I
continued
believe in
relationship?
this place.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the mission of it. I love the students from here. I mean, and every year Bob turns out a dozen from me. I'm going to take them home. And then the people, Jerry, like you, that I've just become friends with over the decades.
Do you give some kind of support and counsel to our program? Because I know I've talked to Bob Grauman, and we invite you back and want you back anytime, but certainly to pick your brain a little bit, and you get a chance to visit with some of our prospective scholars or some of our faculty and staff while you're here.
Yep, and I'm meeting with this time 12, 15 people who are going to go on and do good things. Oh, and let me be honest about it. You guys make sure I have a terrific time.
Oh, gotcha. OSU hospitality, Louis.
Football game, basketball game, meals, whatever. I have a good time here.
Well, do you feel good about you give us some, I know this is my word, some advice, help us out, counsel about some things we can be doing, improving on? Do you do some of that when you're back with us?
Some, but I've also written you guys a check. I've given you more than I've given the Alumni Association at my university, my university alma mater.
Well, Louis, how do you feel the scholarship program, how has it enriched Oklahoma State University?
Well, the guy that asked that is Jim Halligan. Halligan really thinks it has shifted some of the emphasis here. So let me punt on that. Oh, let me refer that to my colleague and friend Jim Halligan.
Well, I had this with Bob Grauman earlier, and I asked Bob, candidly, Bob and I've been friends a long time, I could do that, were there some skeptics when the program first started? And certainly there were, but it has changed. I think there's been a real paradigm shift on this campus, how they perceive the program, its value. And do you feel that yourself?
Yeah. Now, I thought, Jim Halligan bought into it. I thought Dave Smedley bought into it as well. And hoping Burns buys into it. And Burns got so many things on his plate, but I hope he buys into this.
Well, your relationship has been ongoing. We've talked about that. Are there some stories you can recall, some human interest stories that you can share about your experiences at OSU with some of the Truman Scholars or some of our faculty? There's got to be some good stories there.
Well, I mean, the one that jumps to mind was I was here 2 years ago for a football game, and I got all excited when OSU was up by 3 touchdowns over Texas. And I was cheering, yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody else was cheering.
Oh, no.
And of course, we wound up losing that game. Other human interest stories.
If you got some good Bob Drummond stories, you can tell me. Surely there's some good stories on Bob.
Oh, I wouldn't want those. I wouldn't want those on the record. I wouldn't tell you those with the microphone on.
Okay.
But I mean, the stories I like are the ones of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, be it Howard and Jim Carrington, Jim Bernard, you, Peter Sherwood, Bob Drummond, just Edward Jones, just on and on.
Have you maintained any contacts with the former scholars? You mentioned Chris earlier. You talked
Chris, I
about
stayed
Shannon Fowler.
Yeah. Jerry, I've discovered that you have a lot more friends when you're writing checks. And when you turn in that checkbook, the phone doesn't ring as often.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, any teacher knows that you have wonderful relationships with students in your classroom, and 90% of them you never hear from again.
Well, are there some strategies? You alluded to this a little bit earlier, Louis, and I want to pick up on your comments about how you perceive Oklahoma State. Are there some special characteristics that you've identified with OSU students that typifies OSU?
Well, by and large, I think there's a lack of arrogance. So the positive is some humility. I think there's a willingness to exert yourself to prove yourself. I think, let me see, what else? I think there's some groundedness that comes from FFA, from small towns, from a sense of community. I mean, everybody here comes from a community they love. At Memphis, man, I'm from Harlem. Harlem's bad. Couldn't wait to get away from home, dump. And here I think these people have a sense of home. Terrific question.
What, as you were many years with the Truman program, what, as you think back and reflect on that, what do you think the values, what's the long-term impact of the Truman Scholarship Program in people's lives and communities and universities?
Well, I hope the Truman Foundation has shifted career paths, made people aware of some opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Mm-hmm. Or somebody like Shannon Fowler that says, here's another reason why you come back. Or that to Tom Jenkins that says, we believe in your ambition, you'll become a firefighter. I think we've given affirmation to some folks.
Do you feel these people have made a difference in the world, in the lives of others?
Yeah, I mean, my view on making a difference is if you help one person, you've made a difference in the world.
Mm.
One person outside your family. So Truman Foundation, fortunately, was never about who's going to be the next president. Are you going to be the next president? But more about, are you going to go out and do good things because the world needs you?
Thank you. I think in the year, if I remember this correctly, 2000, Louis, the Truman Scholarship Foundation recognized Oklahoma State University as a Truman Honor Institution.
It was.
What are the primary criteria for recognition, and what did OSU do to earn this special recognition?
All right. The criteria were one, to do exceptionally well in the competition. Two was to manifest a set of values. The institution itself, it says public service is important. We're promoting this not just to have a trophy to hang on the wall, but this is part of our mission. Land grant institutions all about service mission.
Well, I understand, and we, in the conversation we talked about your friend Henry Bellman. I understand you made a personal gift to the Henry Bellman Fund.
Yep.
And what influenced you to make that gift, Liz?
Belief in the institution, belief in Henry Bellman, belief in Bob Drummond, and a thought and a hope, and I think mine was the first gift, that maybe this starts something rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Now then the $10-20 million, I gave 1,000. 1,000 for me is, that's a substantial contribution. But just to show, I believe. I'm not alone, but I believe just right.
And that speaks volumes of how
And
you feel
you're
about the
putting my
program.
money on the line.
See, not equal gifts, but equal sacrifice, right?
Well, what was it? A huge sacrifice of. I didn't have to go on bread and water for it, but I wanted to show it.
Well, you gotta get back to who this guy Louis Blair is. If you don't mind a couple of personal questions, Louis. You've had considerable experience in helping develop U.S. policy. I think as a White House congressional staff member, as a consultant and analyst. Can you tell me about those experiences and how they've influenced your life? And
Yeah. When I was young, I thought I was going to become administrator of NASA.
Yeah.
Oh, then when I was mayor of Falls Church, thought I'd become a congressman. And as I sort of moved around the bureaucracy and in the White House, I realized that, all right, even the president on his own can't do much. You need lots and lots of folks. And I said, I want to have something small where give me the responsibility. I can run it. I can tell you where every dollar has gone. And small is beautiful. And so and now I teach at VMI and one-on-one with students. And that's how I see myself a change agent. Small, step but changing folks.
that's great. What, can you tell me about your early life where you grew up? And I know, and I'm kind of jumping up a little bit, but your engineering degrees and your master's in MIT, and yet it seemed like you went in a different direction in life, but must have been some influences early in your life. Could you share a little bit of that?
Well, I was orphaned when I was young, when I was 5. Was taken in by a great aunt, surrounded with some love, had a proverbial rich uncle who sent me to college, didn't give me much guidance. I was good in math, so I said, well, I'll try engineering. I went that way, and then graduate school, I realized I wasn't going to become a PhD in engineering, and bumped around in serendipity or divine intervention or divine guidance or whatever's just moved me around. And someone's asked me recently, have I made any mistakes in life? And of course, everybody makes mistakes. But I don't have any major regrets about where I am, what I'm doing, who I'm married to, who my friends are.
I might ask you this question. It may seem strange. But,
Bring it on,
okay,
Jerry.
who is the real Louis Blair? There's the political one because
Oh.
you moved over. Now, let me just say you were in some major staff assignments with committees in the Senate and the House and with the White House and some high level experiences. But so there's the political one, the Scholarship Foundation executive, student development person, the French chef, French cook guy, goes to France for training. There's the adventurous equestrian. I think you've ridden horses all around the world. The public servant, the mayor of Falls Creek, Virginia. Who's the real Louis Blair out of this?
Well, I mean, I have a little passions bio, and I can send it to you if you like. I mean, first and foremost, you understand, central to my life is my wife, Susanna, written beneath my wings. Second is I'm a guy that I am right by myself for about 15 minutes. I need a community around me. So I need a community. Third, I need young people to try to give them some ideas. And so teaching is part of that. Love the outdoors. Be in the woods on a farm, cutting firewood, riding horses. And fifth is I'm a foodie. I mean, now, so playfully I was telling somebody, it's not that I'm obsessed with food. It's just that I don't think about anything else. But I'm not obsessed. But, you know, I'm a foodie, I'm a devoted husband. I like to think of myself as an educator. And I like to think of myself as an outdoorsman, you know, and horses and policy more, no more. Foundation executive, no.
Living the good life now.
Hey, well, I'm in Oklahoma, meeting with folks and getting ready for a big football game, you bet.
Well, how do you hope people remember Louis Blair? I mean, looking back in your life and doing all things, how do you hope people remember you?
Well, I mean, one with the smile, and second, that maybe some of those folks will remember, well, if it hadn't been for Louis Blair and this song for Truman Scholarship, I wouldn't have gone that way. I'm glad I did. Now, a friend of mine was a setup person for Dolly Parton. And so she asked Dolly, she said, well, Dolly, 100 years from now, what do you hope folks would be saying about you? And Dolly's response was, I hope they're saying she looks great for her age. 100 years from now, I hope I'm not here, but I hope maybe there's some story about me.
Well, let's closing. What advice would you really observed Oklahoma State University in our scholar development enrichment program? I'm trying to think of word other advice. What suggestions? What would you say to keep on doing? What are we doing right, or what would you say going forward? Do you know how the environment's changing? What do we need to do? What advice would you give us?
Well, I mean, the advice is try to put this scholar development set of activities on some permanent basis. Now, it may not just be about scholarships per se, but about enriching the educational experience. So it's not just in the classroom September through May. That's the Cambridge program. That's the Rents Foundation. That it's somebody trying to help folks look for outside opportunities. I really think, and one of the reasons I gave the money is I think if it's not endowed, if Bob Robinson retired, it's very easy. Somebody said, cut it out, and then it's going to be ever so hard to bring it back. Will there be another situation where there's a Henry Bellman that meets a Louis Blair, gets referred to Bob Drummond with a gym there that says, Jim Halligan there that says, let's make this take off.
That's great. Well, we'd like to feel that we've had some success, and you guys, I think, validate that with our designations of Truman Institute Scholarship. What components have you appreciated the most about our program? What do you think has been the most valuable in creating that kind of program we have? What's made it go? What's been the hard power there?
Well, been several things. I mean, one, there has certainly been Bob Drummond. Second, it's been like the ag department. Is it Ed Miller?
Ed Miller. Mm-hmm.
And some others really buying into this.
So faculty engagement involvement.
Faculty engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And saying, we want to find our best folks for Bob.
Mm-hmm.
So it has been Carl Reed saying, we got to make sure we've got engineers participating.
Bob Spurrier in our honors program.
Bob Spurrier, and yeah, sorry, Bob, I should mention you. Bob there pushing them into it.
Well, there's so many things we'd like to ask you and that are probably left out. Are there some things you'd like to share with us or comments that we haven't touched on or covered that you want to leave with us at this time?
Well, I've got a lot of orange and black and no crimson and trim. What I want to leave with is I hope I'll be back and you'll have more questions on it.
Great. We look forward to you coming back. You're always welcome.
I know that, and Jerry, I'll be back.
Thank you.